Alrighty, welcome. For those of you who have never been here, this is NDK Matters. It's a little bit of a special format. Usually this is a Facebook live event, not a pre-recorded video. But as many of you may know, Facebook has been having some issues today across the platform and even other platforms that they own, WhatsApp and Instagram. But their Facebook Live feature and their groups in general have been really struggling today. But we don't take days off here at Destination Health, nor does NDK Matters come to a halt. So we are bringing you a little special edition pre-recorded version of it, and we can discuss it down in the comments as always. I'm going to go through some of my nutritional myths, or not ones that I've made up, but nutritional myths that are out there that really bother me and drive me nuts. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Michael Rutherford. I am a nutritional therapy practitioner as well as a primal health coach here at Destination Health with Let's Truck. That means I focus on real whole food and lifestyle factors to optimize people's health, whether that's digestive issues, blood sugar regulation, autoimmunity, obesity, low energy, whatever it may be. There's lots of different things that we can address, but we use the power of real whole food, sometimes some targeted supplementation and lifestyle factors to improve these issues. And our primary audience is the trucking industry, though we work with people from all over. Now, let's get right into some of these myths. First one, it's kind of a two-sided thing. We're going to start with the most common and more conventional myth, that is calories, and specifically calories in versus calories out. And calories are king when it comes to weight loss, and all you have to do is eat in a caloric deficit. And if you do that, you will lose weight and be healthy. So, first problem with this is no. Our body is such a more complex system than just calories in versus calories out. The reason why this came to be the thing is thermogenics, and this is essentially how energy is used. The problem is this only applies at a cellular level, and there's so many things that happen in our body from the time we eat to the time that food gets to the cellular level. There's a lot of other things going on, things that we can't factor. How much of that are we absorbing? What are the nutrients? Our body responds differently to calories from fat versus calories from carbohydrates versus calories from protein. Versus calories from alcohol, versus calories from exogenous ketones and other methods. So there's other things that are going on, and it's not as simple as just calories. What is our metabolic rate? We can estimate that, but a lot of different things. Take, for example, a thyroid function, how well you slept, how much energy you're expending. All of these things are going to be estimates, even trackers. For example, you could get the different watches and wristbands. You could have an Oura ring like I have that'll try to guess at these things in your expenditure on top of your BMR, your basal metabolic rate. But these are all estimates. Unless you were hooked up to a lot of machines, we don't know your exact expenditure of calories. So anything is going to be a guess. We also don't know the exact calorie content of foods. This carrot could weigh 100 grams and have X amount of calories, and this carrot could also weigh 100 grams and have slightly different calories. A couple bites could be the change in different things. So there's a lot going on, a lot of different functions and things that we can mess up. And like I said, it's just not that simple as calories in versus calories out. Now, does that mean that calories just don't matter? Nope. Guess what? They do still matter. They're just not king. They are still a factor. Sometimes we've gone so far as to say, oh, calories in versus calories out doesn't work, and we just don't need to pay attention to calories. It has nothing to do with that. The reality is, it does have to do with that. But if you eat the right ways, you support proper hormonal function, you support digestion, you support all these things, you don't have to really worry about the calories because your body has the mechanisms inside to regulate these processes. And so we no longer have to succumb to just the calorie. we can allow our body to naturally regulate these versus based on what it needs. The thing is we can bypass proper satiety signals and overconsume foods and then not be able to lose weight. And we can even gain weight even eating healthy things and healthy fats. If we go on a low carbohydrate diet, we could still gain weight on a low carbohydrate diet by eating too much or eating in excess, especially by bypassing satiety, by drinking too many, even an NDK coffee, or some of you may know it as a bulletproof coffee. We have a little twist on it. We call it an NDK coffee, which stands for nutrient dense keto. We add some extras to it and make our own tweaks. If you're drinking lots of those, maybe 2 or 3 of those a day, you can begin to bypass some certain satiety hormones, especially if you're doing that alongside a meal. If you're snacking mindlessly throughout the day, boredom snacking, maybe you're going down the road and you've just got a thing of nuts there and you're picking at them all day long. These are things that begin to bypass satiety hormones and allow us to overconsume. We need to be chewing and we need to be present when we eat. We need to sit down, stop, be present, chew our food, and take our time. Otherwise, we can jam in too much food too quickly. The great example I think most people are going to be familiar with is Thanksgiving dinner, right? We get this big giant plate, we sit down and we shovel it all in, and about 5-10 minutes after we finish, we're just like, oh, I'm too full, I ate too fast. You bypass those signals your digestive system wants to send to your brain saying, stop, we have enough, don't eat more. But we've bypassed that. Or things like salt, fat, and sugar, or salt, fat, and carbs, when in combination, can really begin to bypass these. Think about potato chips. Think about crushing down a whole bag of potato chips like it was nothing. Or think about drinking sugar. We can drink sugar in the form of fruit juices and sodas, and we can get large amounts of extra calories without feeling any satiety. This is a big problem. And about 50% of our added sugar intake comes from beverages. These are things, and what's worse about these, again, like I said, they've allowed an excess in caloric intake very easily because they bypass those satiety hormones that are there, because those aren't natural foods. That's not how our body is designed to consume foods. We need to be very careful around these. So it's not that they are king, that calories are king and calories in and calories out is all that matters, but that also doesn't mean that we completely get rid of them. We still need to be mindful about these things. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, I don't track calories, I track macros. Macros are just, that is the best thing the diet culture ever did, was create if it fits your macros. By the way, that was designed by the diet culture and all of that going on because people were starting to bash calories and feel bad about calorie tracking. So they just designed another model. Macros, every macronutrient has a calorie assignment to it, which means if you're tracking macros, I can tell you within seconds how many calories you're eating based off that. It's just a different modality. And again, these have some tools to them and they can be useful. It's just not the end all be all. We need to get our system functioning properly and then eat the right foods and then allow our hormonal system to regulate this properly. The next big one that drives me nuts that a lot of you are going to be familiar with is grains are a necessary component to a healthy diet. And there's actually a second part to this when people argue about, oh, they can't give them up. But let's focus on grains are necessary. I would love for you guys, whoever you are, if you feel this way, that grains are necessary, I would love for you to submit to me by however means possible. Find me on any modality of social network or email us in at support@letstruck.com. You could comment on this video, whatever it may be. If you feel that grains are a necessary component to optimal health, and tell me what it is in grains that is so crucial to our health that we can't get from anything else, or that is very difficult to get from anything else. If you can find that, and let me know. In fact, if you can find that about any food group, I know there's actually one subgroup of foods that you could possibly make this claim about. I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet. It's going to be in a future talk. That would give a reason as to why everyone should be eating these if possible. and it's only one very small subgroup of foods. And it's nothing you're probably thinking of. It's not carbohydrates, it's not fats, it's not grains, it's not animal foods, it's not plant foods. It's something very small and minute. Really interesting stuff coming out about them. Anyways, grains aren't necessary. They don't contain anything we can't get from something else. Now, the second part of that is I could never do that. I can't give up my grains. I crave them. It's so bad. I'm addicted. I challenge you then, if you so crave grains and you just love your grains and your carbs and all those good stuff, you crave pasta, you crave breads, I'm going to put you to a challenge. I want you to take a cup of pasta and boil it in plain water. No oil added, no butter, no salt, no nothing. Just plain water. Boil that plain pasta in there. Sit down and eat it just like that. You don't get to add olive oil. You don't get to add butter. You don't get to add salt. You don't get to add red sauce or meat or anything. I want you to cook and eat a plain bowl of pasta and tell me how satisfying it is. Tell me how delicious it is and how much you just crave having that again. I want you to do the same thing with white rice and with a bowl of oats and whatever other thing that you might like. I want you to sit down and eat those foods. You talk about breads. I want you to make a bread out of nothing other than water and flour. Eat the most basic bread. I don't want you to ferment it. I don't want you to age it. I just make a mix of flour and water and then bake it and eat it and tell me how good that really is. It just isn't, right? So we don't crave the grains themselves. We don't crave the breads, the pastas, the oatmeals. What do you crave? Everything you add into it. Oatmeal, the raisins, the dried fruits, the cinnamon, the sugar, all those things, the milk even, the cream, whatever it is you're adding it, those are the things that you crave. You add all those add-ins and the combinations of these things. Pasta, you want the red sauce, the butter, the garlic, the olive oil, the meat, all the other things. These grains and pastas and breads and things, they're delivery systems. We don't enjoy eating just plain bread, right out of the bag, just a slice of bread. No one's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get home and just have this plain thing of bread. It's the mayonnaise, the mustard, the lunch meats, the lettuce, tomato, onions, sprouts, cucumbers, avocado, whatever it is you're all putting in there. That's what you like. That's what you're craving. Just eat those things. Put it in something else. Anything beyond that is a psychological craving, and just because you associate those foods with the bread, with the pastas, because it's the main component is just the delivery system. Change the delivery system and get the sauces, get the meats, get the veggies, get all those good things on just a different delivery system. I challenge you, if you think you crave those things, to go and eat those and tell me how delicious they really are. I don't think you're going to enjoy that plain bowl of plain cooked pasta very much, and you're probably not going to crave having that meal again. So something to think about. And once we begin to see that and then break that psychological craving of that, you'll realize that's not what you're craving. It's the delivery system. So start recognizing what you're truly craving and feed that craving, and you'll feel a lot better, and you'll be able to remove those things. That can be one of the biggest struggles, is that psychological craving. You just need to rewire it correctly so that your brain recognizes that you're not craving those grains, but you're craving the things that come with them. Next myth is that our nutritional guidelines are science-backed. Obviously, it's done by the government. They in these medical and health industries and agencies, and they would never release all this hard, these strict guidelines if there weren't tons of evidence. But would they? What if they did? What if decades ago there wasn't a lot of evidence? It was one or two studies that possibly showed it, and now we know that those studies were rigged to show a specific outcome. They didn't have a question and apply the scientific method to it properly. They wanted to reach an outcome and designed a study that would likely get them there. And then once they had that and they created the guidelines, they then have created dozens and hundreds of studies since then in that same process. Here's the outcome we want. We need to create a study that would likely show that outcome. Not, we have a question, let's theorize and create a study and see what happens. That is how the scientific method was designed and supposed to be used. Very little research is now properly done using the scientific method, and this is why we have nutritional info that says this, and also the exact opposite. This causes this, and this protects against this. Wait, but which is it? It can't do both. Yes, there's bioindividuality, and some things will be better for others than for some, but the reality is that we are tweaking science to our benefit instead of letting science give us the answers. This is very dangerous. There's just not, realistically, what happened is we created these guidelines and then tried to create science to back them up. Most things are not even based off of science, which is going to lead us into my next favorite one. And that was kind of a quick one, but that's something I just want to get out there. Is that people think that we have a lot of this. One of those big ones, and we'll talk about how it gets out there and how these things become so widespread. Food before one is just for fun. Now, this may seem that it doesn't apply to a lot of you. A lot of you may be older, but you might have grandkids or your kids of your own, and this is really important. And can potentially be very damaging. Food before one is just for fun. Where did this come from? In fact, it's so widespread. Doctors, pediatricians, journals are now talking about this. It's all over the place. Where did it come from? It did not come from research. It did not come from science. Where did it come from? A mom blog. Now, I've got nothing against mom blogs. Some of them out there are fantastic. Essentially, this was a mom who was struggling, and her kid wouldn't eat, and it was just a saying that came about to make it happy. Why? Because if you're giving breast milk or formula or whatever, those things should have everything that the baby needs. But is that true? Does breast milk, does formula contain everything a baby needs up until the age of 1? Nope. Now, do not get me wrong, guys. I am a huge, huge fan of breastfeeding as long as possible. If you're able to breastfeed to 3 years old, fantastic. There's benefits to that. We see that. Breastfeeding to at least the age of 1 is hugely beneficial. It slows down after that, but there's still benefits going beyond the age of 1 and definitely to age 2 and 3. The older the child gets, the less benefit there is, but there's still obviously some benefit. But breast milk beyond the age of 6 months old is deficient in a couple key nutrients. 2 very important ones at that: iron and zinc. This is not dependent now, and this isn't even dependent on the mother's diet. The mother's diet could eat a very nutrient-dense diet. The breast milk is still going to be poor in iron and zinc, especially iron. Iron is probably the most specific, but zinc can be a problem as well. Now, you'll see, oh yeah, but that breast milk has iron and it's super bioavailable. This is true. The iron in breast milk is very bioavailable, but there's very little of it. Doesn't matter how available it is if there's so tiny amounts of it and it doesn't meet the needs of the baby. The reason why it's up to 6 months is not that the breast milk is giving it up to that point and then changes, but that, and so for some babies this is sooner. Some babies run out of proper iron stores at 4 months or 3 months. Some babies can go up to 7 or 8 months. This vastly depends on cord clamping, which is a process of essentially waiting to cut the umbilical cord and some processes that happen in that and such, allowing all of the blood flow or as much of blood flow out of the placenta into the baby as possible. The more we have that coming into the baby, the more iron that baby has stored up to get further several months more. So that's, you can, like I said, you may not see problems until 7, 8, maybe 9 months down the road, but the baby will become deficient in iron if breast milk is their only source of intake, or if they're not eating iron-rich foods. This is why all of the baby cereals are fortified with iron. We know this. We know that breast milk does not have the necessary iron. Now, am I saying that those babies should be eating the baby cereals? No. Especially with, supplemental iron in there. What do we want? What is the most important thing for a baby to eat first? Meat. Meat is the first most important food a baby should start on. And this is the exact opposite we give babies. Most babies are first fed fruits and vegetables, maybe some starches, sweet potatoes and things like that. These easily digestible foods for the baby. Guess what? Babies handle meats just fine. They do a fantastic job, and the meats contain all of the nutrients, specifically iron and zinc, the most, that babies need. Red meat, bone marrow. These are all egg yolks, bone broth. These can all be very good things for the baby's first foods. Liver, beef liver, bone marrow, bone broth, and egg yolks. 4 foods that would be fantastic to give your baby for its first foods. Absolutely great starting places for first foods for babies. Food before 1 is just for fun is not true. There's no science behind it. This never came from medical studies. This never came from anything. It was literally came from blogs, and it spread and somehow got so widespread that it's now in all sorts of things. It's even pediatricians are restating this, essentially trying to help parents feel better about their baby struggling to eat. And guess what? A baby can struggle to eat real food and start eating because it's deficient in zinc. Guess where it gets zinc? Real food. We need to get them eating these real foods, and specifically meats, to get these zinc and iron so that they have proper function. Super, super crucial. Like I said, it's not always infant feeding and toddler feeding really isn't our forte of things. It's something I've worked with a lot. I do help run a parenthood group, a more holistically minded one. So it's something I talk about a lot. Something obviously very important to me because I got into all of this as my kids were getting into real food. They were around 6 months old when I started getting into this. I made all of their food from scratch for the first 2 years. They were on purees. The vast majority of that time were on just purees. I made all of them. So really, really important stuff to me personally. And something I hate to see. I want to see babies thrive, and really they need some of those meats to thrive so that they're getting that iron and zinc, and B vitamins, some other things, but really specifically that iron and zinc. Some other things. So, we see this a lot from the vegan community, claiming that we're supposed to be vegans. We're not designed to eat meat for various reasons, or that I've seen claims that try and go and hunt with no tools, and see how well you can catch an animal. So if you can dig into them and eat them and see how well you do. Well, first of all, we evolved to the function that we have because of eating these things and being able to have higher brain function, and some of that was because we started eating fish and things like that grew our brain size. A lot of things going on, but our bodies anatomically and physiologically are designed to eat both plants and animals. I think that we should have a plant-based diet, meaning a diet based on a lot of plants. It should include a lot of plants. Your plate by volume should be mostly plants. That doesn't mean a plant-only diet. I believe in a diet of both plants and animals, an omnivorous diet. That's what we are. We are omnivores. One of the arguments that people, the vegan community will often use, and the reason why I bring this up, because it's becoming more conventional. We're seeing meatless Mondays, and entire school districts, now instilling meatless Mondays to try and save the planet. First of all, going vegan is impossible for the entire world, and it would actually make a lot of the land we currently have we wouldn't be able to use it. There's a lot of land that we can graze animals on that would not sustain plant life for farming. So we use that land to raise animals, and we're most efficient when we use that land for grazing, and then other land for farmland and for growing vegetables and plants and things like that. We also just wouldn't be able to feed people enough nutrition and energy on just plants. So lots of problems from there. Grazing animals also help the entire ecosystem and the health of the planet. Properly raised animals actually sequester carbon dioxide, specifically ruminants, so cows, bison, lambs, things like that. They actually sequester carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And it's incredible. The things that you can do. You can check out Diana Rogers of Sustainable Dish, as well as the Savory Institute. They're doing a lot of work on these things. They're working on a book. They're working on a documentary on properly raised animals. There's a lot of good stuff going on. But back to the vegan argument, and that we're vegans, and we can see this because our closest animal relative is the primate, and they eat, and that they're herbivores or even fruitarians. This is so incredibly false. They're not. These primates are different monkeys and gorillas and chimpanzees and all these different primates actually aren't herbivores. They're not fruitarians. In fact, if you watch the newest Planet Earth series, Planet Earth 2, there's a wonderful, incredible piece. I believe it's in Planet Earth. It's one. I've watched so many of these nature documentaries, but I'm pretty sure it's in the Planet Earth series. They actually follow. I don't remember if it was chimpanzees or something else. They follow a type of primate, and they're in these giant groups. And they're basically going for, this is their area, and they want to take over this area where there's another kind of group or tribe. And they literally, it's pretty incredible to watch. They mount an assault. They all get ready. They all go over and literally create an assault on this other group. And any of the ones that they catch, they basically try and flee them out. But any of the other primates that they catch, they literally viciously attack, tear down, kill, and eat. This is not what an herbivore would do. They literally, they brutally attack, all-out assault on any of the ones that they catch. And you can see the footage of them on the ground where one has died and fallen, and they're eating this thing. They also, on a lesser level, when they're eating, they will dig and eat and find hordes and nests and things of bugs in trees, and they will reach in and eat those. Bugs are actually incredibly rich of all of the nutrients that we've either don't find in plants or find very, very little of. B12, good iron, good zinc, things like that, are found very well in bugs, interestingly enough. And they're kind of this condensed form of them, and so eating bugs can get them a lot of the nutrition that they're not getting from the plant, from the fruits and plants that they're eating, as well as, like I said, they'll hunt these other things. So it's pretty incredible to see that even those animals aren't really fruitarians or herbivores or anything like that. And any herbivore, think about it, there are bugs. these animals aren't going into supermarkets and getting very clean, fresh produce, right? They're out in the wild. What's on all of these different plants? Bugs and things like that. These animals are going to be secondarily eating these bugs. That's giving them the nutrition that they need. They're not like shaking it clean and washing it in the water and making sure all these things are off. So they're getting all of those nutrients they need, oftentimes secondarily by eating the bugs that happen to be on these plants. So a lot of things to think about there. We're just not designed. And if you look at our anatomy and physiology, we have the pH. We have a very low optimal digestive function. Our pH should be between 1.5 and 3. This is much more leaning towards a carnivore's pH, which is around 1, versus an herbivore's pH, which is much higher, can be around 4 and 5. Our optimal range is between 1.5 and 3. That's where the pH of our stomach is supposed to be. Why? Why do we have such strict? Why do those who eat meat, not even necessarily carnivores are very low in pH, but even omnivores have a lower pH, which means more acidic, because that stomach acid does two things. It helps break down that meat, but it's also a protective agent against the bacteria that can come in these meats. Our stomach acid is our first defense against bacterial infections. That acid helps to kill off the bacteria. It's very important there. That's why carnivores have such low pH, very acidic content, because that's all they're eating, and they can run the risk of bacterial infections. So they have that more heightened pH level. It also helps just to break down that protein and meat in general. We also have a digestive, you can look at length of digestive tract in accordance to the length of an animal. We are an animal, and the ratio of that. And if you look at ours, we are not towards the carnivore, and we're not towards the herbivore. We are an omnivorous in the middle, because we digest both. So we're not super long or super short. I forget which one is which, but we're more towards the middle. And in fact, I think we actually slide slightly towards the carnivore, actually, interestingly. I don't think that makes us more carnivore, just that we have that ability, we have that need. We also have both flat teeth and sharp teeth, including canines, right? So we have these very sharp teeth that are made for tearing, and our front teeth are very narrow. They're not flat, right? These are made for tearing and chewing. We even have canines that are sharper, come to a point. And then we have flat teeth for chewing plants and things like that, because that's how we're designed to eat both. We have this anatomical and physiological design as an omnivore to both handle and deal with plants and animals. These are all very important things. These are not by accident, right? We even have, we also have, when you look at certain ruminants or things, animals that are more ruminants, herbivores, they have a very good ability to take beta carotene or ALA and different plant things like plant omega-3s and plant forms of certain nutrients like vitamin A. Beta carotene is a precursor to vitamin A. We as humans do not turn beta carotene into vitamin A, retinol, very well. We don't turn ALA into EPA or DHA very well, which is the animal form of fish oil, of these omega-3s. Whereas ruminants and different herbivores do that very well. They do that for us so that we can then eat the animal and get those nutrients in the proper form that we need for us. Pretty incredible stuff that gets done that way. The other things that we have, there's one other one, I can't remember. But that's so keep that in mind. Again, we have these systems in place that either we don't handle very well that other animals that are herbivores do. And we're supposed to be eating those so that we can get those nutrients from them. They're converting it for us. They're taking all those plant nutrients and turning them into nutrients that are more bioavailable for us. Now, there are also other benefits to eating plants that we can get, but those aren't some of them. Some people tell you, oh, you can get lots of omega-3s from plants. You can, and ALA still has some function in our body, but it's and we should still be getting some plant omega-3s, ALA. But our primary source of omega-3 should be coming from animals, especially seafood, which has the highest content of omega-3s. So let's get into some more specific ones. Let's look at keto, for example. So there's a lot of ones specifically around keto. We know most of our tribe deals with metabolic syndrome and different diseases that have been vastly known to be improved with a ketogenic lifestyle. We specifically focus on a nutrient-dense keto. You can do keto in a lot of different ways, and it can both be bad and good. We want to focus on doing this the right way, the best way, and that's a nutrient-dense ketogenic diet. One that gets passed around a lot is a ketogenic diet suppresses thyroid function, and that it can either cause hypothyroid or will make someone with hypothyroid worse. I just need to breathe for a minute. I have worked with a lot of people who have Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, an autoimmune disease of the thyroid, as well as non-autoimmune hypothyroidism. And guess what? Pretty much all of them have used a ketogenic diet and greatly improved their well-being and reduced their medications, improved their symptoms, so they're not feeling those symptoms as much, and reduced their antibodies. Now, why does this statement get thrown around? Is there research that shows this? Yes and no. Yes, there is research that shows that a ketogenic diet may suppress T3, a thyroid hormone. But what's really important with hypothyroidism and several things is that not only do the blood levels matter, so we need to know the level of the hormones, we also need to look at symptoms. If we are actually hypothyroid, we will display symptoms. If we don't display symptoms of hypothyroid, those levels might be slightly lower, but we're not hypothyroid because there's no physical effect on that. We're not seeing the change. We're not having that effect on our metabolic function. Our energy is still good. We're still feeling great, right? A lot of these different things. What does that mean? That the body is actually functioning at a better state. And this is a good thing that we have slightly lower levels of T3. Because if you look at studies, it shows that animals who have lower levels of T3 live longer. Animals with higher levels of T3, as their normal amount, live shorter lifespans. We want to live longer. We want to optimize our health and have a longer lifespan. In general, some people may not. Most of us want to stick around a little bit longer, and especially at a healthy state. So that slightly lower T3, that's a good thing, because what that's doing is if we have too much T3, we're increasing our metabolism. Most people think that they want to increase their metabolism so that they burn more energy and more fat. But guess what? You increase your metabolism, you're burning through all that energy, your body's going to increase your appetite hormones so that you eat more to sustain that increase in metabolism. So you're not actually losing any more weight by increasing your metabolism, and you're actually shortening your lifespan. The faster your metabolism is, the shorter your lifespan. This goes across the board for animals. We can see that. The faster they have, the faster metabolic rate an animal has, the shorter their lifespan. Super important things to know. We don't want to be always trying to increase our metabolism. Now, we don't want it to be super low either. We want to be able to have enough metabolic function to sustain good energy. So what does this mean? Why is keto suppressing or lowering T3? Because we don't need as much. Because some of the effects of a high carbohydrate diet, which is what we're basing those levels on, have some more of those requirements, and we're needing to speed that up. As we adjust our metabolic function, we simply don't need as much. So if you have slightly lower, now if you have really low T3 levels and you have symptoms, obviously this is a case of hypothyroidism. Now, does that mean keto caused it? No, because if you one of the things that could happen is we have a lot of dysfunction in our body, and some of that can be digestive dysfunction. If we have digestive dysfunction and then we go to a very satiating diet, we just may not be getting enough. I see a lot of, especially women, but this can happen to men too, who are eating 800, 900 calories and like, I'm just not hungry. Chances are they have poor digestive function. They are functionally constipated. Even if they don't think they're constipated, they're probably only going to having a bowel movement every 2, 3, 4, 5 days. This is whether they are straining to have a bowel movement or not. This is functionally constipated, and this can likely cause a slow in their intake and suppress their appetite hormones, which then again, now they're not taking enough in, they don't feel hungry, it's super suppressed, they're super suppressing their appetite, all these things, and this caloric deficit, extreme caloric deficit, 800, 900, 1,000, whatever, these really low levels, that regardless of macronutrient balance, that could be super high carb, it could be a balance of all of them, it could be like a 30-30-40, whatever it may be. That alone, that caloric deficit, can cause hypothyroidism. It has nothing to do with keto. Keto is what then caused the caloric deficit because of the dysfunction and the over-satiety of the ketogenic diet. But it wasn't the process of ketosis or the diet itself that caused the hypothyroidism. So there's a lot of misnomers here, and most of this is anecdotal evidence. Well, I did this and I got hypothyroidism, or I had these symptoms, and so keto caused that for me. Okay, well, how did you do it? Because I've taken a lot of those people, then we put them on we figured out a better formulated ketogenic diet for them, and guess what? They got a lot better. There's no one way to do it, right? There's a lot of different ways that we can approach this, and there's going to be tweaks and things here and there, and different ways we need to support this. This person may need more carbs, this person may need less, this person may need more protein, less fat, whatever it may be. There's a lot of different nuances. Also, we have to look at lifestyle. What lifestyle factors do you have going on that we need to address? Lots of different things at play here. How harshly did you go keto? Did you go from standard American diet to keto overnight? That is incredibly harsh on your body. That's a big stressor, and that stress load can cause it. But so would going from a standard American diet to a vegan diet could do the exact same thing. Any drastic dietary change could be a stressor on your body and cause some dysfunction in your thyroid. So things to keep in mind. Other than keto causes XYZ. One of the things, my dad, Kevin Rutherford, is the owner of Destination Health and Let's Talk, and he is, the voice of the show and started all this. He often, and also an NTP, often says how, doctors weren't complaining and no one was complaining when you were eating the standard American diet. The second you went keto, oh man, you can't do that. You got XYZ. Well, why didn't you say I couldn't eat the standard American diet? Because I had AFib, or I had hypothyroidism, or I had XYZ. But all of a sudden now keto, and even a real, they'll even say it. Well, I'm eating real whole food. You can't do that because you've got this. What? How can this be worse than Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's and Doritos and frozen pizzas and whatever it may be, sodas and juices? How could this be worse than that? even if this isn't the best way, how can it be worse than that, right? And what is real whole food causing these problems? Um, there's some of people have they went keto and then they had a gallbladder attack. Did keto cause the gallbladder problem? Did it cause the attack? Very well could have. But did it cause the problem? The attack was simply a symptom. It wasn't the actual problem. It was your body making it aware. And this is a big one. Ketogenic diets do not cause unhealthy gallbladders. The gallbladder was already unhealthy, but you weren't using it, and then you started a ketogenic diet, which does demand the gallbladder, and now the gallbladder, who hasn't been working or is working very little, is now at a high demand, and now there's dysfunction, and it tries to push, and there were stones that built up a very thick bile, and now it tries to push that through the bile ducts, and it can't, and you get a pain, you have a gallbladder attack, they have to take it out. Did keto cause that? No. The years and years of poor dieting, of poor fats, of eating bad fats, fried foods, highly processed seed oils, of eating high carbohydrates, of eating low fat, all these different factors of eating a nutrient poor diet, all of these different things are going to lead to poor gallbladder health. If you've got a lot of toxicity in your life, that can lead to poor gallbladder health. Our liver detoxes in a couple different ways. It takes certain things and sends it to the kidney to be excreted through the urine, and it also puts things into the bile. The liver produces the bile. Your liver's over here, produces the bile that then gets stored in the gallbladder. And when you eat fat, the gallbladder, cholecystokinin, CCK, is signaled from the small intestine, sent up to your gallbladder to contract and release that bile appropriate to the amount of fat there to help digest the fat. What happens if you don't eat fat? That signal never happens, or you eat very little fat. So all of this, your liver is producing this bile to detox, and then it's sitting in your gallbladder and it's not going anywhere. Or what if you're eating a nutrient poor diet or eating bad fats, which are all components to make the bile, and you're making poor bile, or you have a lot of toxins and that's getting put in there, and all of this builds up and you create sludge. Think about this as an engine and fuel. The gallbladder works as like your fuel injector, and if you have really crappy fuel, or you have a lot of sediment in your fuel, guess what's going to happen? All of that's going to get built up. We're going to create jams and sludge, and a lot of problems are going to happen. Or let's say you had a vehicle, an engine that sat there for 5 years. As that sat and it wasn't getting used, the engine wasn't getting turned on and run. It settles, it creates sludge, and all these things happen, right? And that's the same thing. If we're not using our gallbladder very well, all these things kind of sit in there and sludge. Then you try and start that, and now we have problems. Exact same thing is happening here with the gallbladder. Turning the engine on did not cause the fuel problems or the fuel injector problems or anything else. It was the fact that it sat there for 5 years and didn't get used that created the problems. Or it's the fact that you allowed crap into your fuel system and got all this sediment and different things that caused the problem. It's not that you turned the car on and tried to use it. It's that these things sat there, or these bad things got in there, these toxins and different chemicals or compounds or sediment, whatever it is, got in there and caused the problem. It wasn't turning it on. It wasn't going keto that caused the problem. Now, am I saying that if you have a gallbladder, you should go gung-ho keto? No, there's a lot of things that we do. If you look at our keto kit, 2 ingredients in there, 2 supplements that are in there, the reasons why I have them. We have our beta TCP from Biotics Research, as well as our Livitrit from Biotics Research. What do these do? Livitrit is an herbal compound meant to support the liver function. Beta TCP is targeted at fat digestion through thinning and making of good healthy bile and bile flow. There's taurine, vitamin C, beet extract that are all targeted at making good healthy bile. Why? Because we need to support these functions when going into a ketogenic diet, because most people have poor function in these systems, and we need to make sure they're supported so people can properly handle this load. I've got a couple more. This is a long one, guys. I told you there's a lot we could cover, and I could cover a lot more. These are just kind of my big ones. Paleo is nutrient poor or leads to deficiency. So could any diet. Could a paleo diet be nutrient poor and lead to deficiencies? Yes, Could it be nutrient rich and have no worries at all? Yes. Could a vegan diet be that way? Yes. Is the standard American diet that way? I don't even think you can have a nutrient rich standard American diet. Let's be real. Can a low fat diet be nutrient deficient? Yes, very much deficient in what? Fat soluble vitamins. If we're not eating fat, it's very hard to not only get the fat soluble vitamins because they're generally bound with fat, but also to digest and absorb them properly. We need fat in order to absorb fat soluble vitamins. Any diet can be deficient. Paleo can also be very nutrient rich. A ketogenic diet can be very nutrient rich because in fact if we go on the scale of nutrient density per serving, meats, shellfish, organ meats win hands down above anything else. Organ meats and shellfish are the two most nutrient rich foods that you can eat per serving. What happens is that they often do it per calorie or per whatever, and so look at how nutrient rich plants are versus meats. Yeah, but who can eat 100 calories of kale? Like, ugh, it's so gross. It takes it's like massive amounts. And now or that's like all you ate. You can't eat anything else because it's so much volume, right? But if you look at it at an actual serving size, what an actual serving size looks like, organ meats and shellfish win hands down. Then meats follow up, nuts and seeds, low starchy vegetables or non-starchy vegetables, low glycemic fruits like avocados, lemons, limes, berries. These all win out. What are some of the least nutrient-rich foods per serving? Grains, added sugars. Legumes are kind of in the middle. They're definitely much more nutrient dense than a grain, but they're not as nutrient rich per serving as a vegetable or a piece of meat or things like that. And it's balancing other things. You can't just take this one component, right? So we have to compare those micronutrients to the macros that you're getting and balance these things. A lower carb, well-focused paleo diet or nutrient-dense keto diet is incredibly nutrient. I made a single salad that gave me 50% of my magnesium, potassium. It gave me over 100% of multiple B vitamins. Gave me a high percentage of lots of minerals and B vitamins and different nutrients. It was 3 cups of raw spinach. It was a 4-ounce piece of salmon. It was a whole avocado, a 1/4 cup of sprouted pumpkin seeds, and a 1/4 cup of sauteed mushrooms. This was a pretty easy salad. I can't eat huge meals. I get capped out usually around 800 to 1,000 calories of real whole food. I can't eat much more than that in a meal, for the most part. And this was about my cap. I was full when I finished this, but I could. And the nutrient profile I printed, I plugged it into an app called Chronometer that'll show you all your different micronutrients. It was astounding. It was so incredibly nutrient. That was one meal. I probably had at least one more, if not a second meal that day. I can tell you, eating that way, I fulfilled a lot of things. Oysters are great. They don't have huge amounts of certain things, maybe except for zinc. They've got a lot of zinc. But they have a lot of different minerals, some B vitamins and things like that. Liver is super high in a handful of things. Really good for B vitamins, super high in vitamin A, B12, has a good source of iron, super high amounts of copper. Very lean. You're not even getting a lot of fat, which also means that it's the nutrient density per calorie is super high. Same with the oysters, which are also getting omega-3s. If you look at cod livers, super nutrient dense. Tons of omega-3s, super high in other nutrients. Vitamin A, vitamin D, one of the most difficult to get through food. Phenomenal things that we can find. You don't find a vegetable or a grain that has 400% of this nutrient. The only exception to that is vitamin A, but it's beta carotene, and again, we already talked about the very, very poor conversion of beta carotene to real vitamin A, so even that isn't very true. It's very misleading. Any diet can be nutrient poor. But if we focus on nutrient-dense foods, which are very easy to get, all of the most nutrient-dense foods are available in a paleo diet, are available in a keto diet. So it's really not a problem. And in fact, if you just ate on a nutrient-dense scale, you'd basically be eating a paleo diet in almost a very low carb and close to ketogenic diet for most people. So it's things to keep in mind. It's not. Now I saved this one for last because it's gonna upset a lot of people in our tribe. A lot of people are like, "What? What? That's not what you've been saying." I'm gonna take off the glasses for this one. It's about to get real. All right, guys. So I got the last one. I'm gonna try and keep this under an hour. I know there's a lot going on, so we're gonna try and keep this the next 10 minutes here. Most of our fat should not be saturated fat. Now, you have the other end of the conventional spectrum. When they say we should eat very, very little saturated fat, it should only be about 10% of our intake. I don't necessarily think it needs to be super low, but the paleo community, the ketogenic community, Real Whole Food, Weston A. Price, all of them kind of took this, saturated fat doesn't cause heart disease and isn't a problem, so let's eat all of it. And we went way over to the other end of the spectrum. Guess what, guys? We don't have the science to back that up. It's not there. You know what we do have the science for, though? That the primary fat in our diet should be monounsaturated fats. Things like olive oil, things like avocado oil, some nuts and seeds, macadamias are a great monounsaturated fat source. Lard is actually a pretty good one. It's actually rich in monounsaturated fats, still saturated fat. But if you look at my animal fats, the lard is what I cook, pasture-raised lard is what I primarily use for any animal fats. Good, high-quality, true, fresh, extra virgin olive oil is actually one of the most protective fats to cook with. Not something you hear a lot about. Everyone says saturated fats are. But the extreme high polyphenol and antioxidant content of extra virgin olive oil, very good, well-sourced extra virgin olive oil, protects the fats from what? Oxidizing. That's why we're worried about certain fats in the cooking process, is that they can become oxidized and damaged. Well, antioxidants and polyphenols protect the fat molecules in this. This is a very good thing. Olive oil can be a great fat to cook with, but again, that depends on the type of fat. I can add somewhere in the comments a link to a great discussion on this, as well as the brand that I use, Casanadrino's extra virgin olive oil, super fresh. I've gotten bottles 2 months after it was pressed, not after it was bottled, but after the olive itself was pressed into an oil. It was to my doorstep within 2 months. They give you the pressed on date. One of the only companies in the world who does that, at least especially here available in the US. Most people give you a use by date that's not standardized. You have no idea when that was pressed, how old it was, if it's still fresh, if it has integrated over time, heat, light, all these different things. Casanadrino's does a lot to conserve the quality and freshness of their oils so that when it gets to you, it's still what it is. So now, does that mean we need to avoid saturated fats? No, but we get plenty of saturated fat through our dietary intake. If you're eating eggs, if you're eating if you're eating meats have plenty of saturated fat. If you're eating eggs, there's good amounts of saturated fat. We need some. We just don't need a lot. And there's not really any research that shows that it should be our primary fat. Really, the research points towards monounsaturated fats being the primary. So just something to keep in mind. Again, I'm not bastardizing. I'm not saying it's terrible. I just don't think that it should be our primary fat. In fact, there's actually some research that high amounts of saturated fat intake can create some gut permeability. This is something newer that's coming out. It's not very widespread. It's newer research. I'm really digging into it more. It's pretty interesting. And I can see some correlation, which doesn't mean causation, but definitely I can see some correlation in some things, some conversations I've had with people. That it's pretty interesting. So again, something to keep in mind. We don't need to be pouring saturated fat on everything. Yes, it tastes good. Yes, we can use it somewhat. It really shouldn't be our primary fat. Our primary fat should really be the monounsaturated fats, using lots of oil, lots of avocado oil. And what's a great way to do that? If you're roasting vegetables, if you're making salads, if you're eating plants, cook those plants or toss those raw vegetables in monounsaturated fats, walnut or macadamia nut oil, which is a good tasty one. You could do the avocado oil, extra virgin avocado, extra virgin olive oil. All these things are good sources of monounsaturated fats. A good cooking fat to get some good monounsaturated fats are going to be lard, Again, not that you need to be trimming the fat off of any of your meats. Eat those. Get your fat, especially your saturated fat, from real whole food sources. They should be naturally present in the food. And most of our fat should come that way. Eating some nuts and seeds, sprouted nuts and seeds, eating avocados, eating olives, eating, these different foods, fatty fish, fatty cuts of meat, eggs. These are how a lot of our fat should be coming in. Something to keep in mind. I know that one's going to get a lot of people up in a tizzy, throw some people off. They're probably really surprised to hear that one. Like I said, this is Nutritional Myths. This is one that I have been talking a lot more about with some people, is that we don't need to go crazy with the saturated fats. And really, like I said, that the monounsaturated fats should be our primary. And if we look, I think what we now know today as the Mediterranean diet, and what mostly gets touted around, isn't a very good example. It's post World War II Mediterranean. If you look at pre-World War II, which is where the original research, when we looked at these societies, it's like, hey, these eat really well. It was actually those who were born and raised post World War II. They ate mostly vegetables, seafood, and meats, and they cooked with olive oil. Mediterraneans consume on average over 15 liters of olive oil. I can guarantee you there's not a whole, they're not using basically any other fat. That's all they're using to get 15 liters in. That is a lot to consume, by the way. So things to keep in mind. And again, that diet is, when you look at that one specifically in the areas that have high amounts of longevity, this is their diet. They eat lots of seafood, lots of fresh vegetables and leafy greens, very little grains. Pasta for them isn't how we Americanized Mediterranean dishes, where it's this big, huge thing of pasta. They eat multiple courses, and one course is a small amount of pasta. Now, am I saying that we should eat pasta? No, I think we can tweak that. If you look up the Spanish ketogenic diet, it's primarily fish, vegetables, wine, dark chocolate, and extra virgin olive oil. I'm in, guys. That's my diet right there. That's what I want. So that's what I have for you guys. That's it. And by that's it, I mean that was 57 minutes of information. That's a lot to go on. That's it. Put your comments, questions, all those good things down below in the comment section, whether this is on YouTube or in our Facebook group. Put those down below. I'd love to have a conversation with you. And I'll see you next time.